It's time to welcome our first speaker. He teaches philosophy at Harvard, political philosophy. His writings on justice, on democracy, and ethics have been translated into more than 30 languages, and his course, Justice, was the first from Harvard to be available online. It's already got over 38 million views on YouTube alone. And he'll be talking about what he calls democracy's discontent. We'll meet him right after this.
Thank you. Thank you. These are hard times for democracy, angry times. In countries around the world, citizens are frustrated about how deeply polarized our societies have become. Why are we so polarized? And what, if anything, could we do to begin to heal the divides that separate us and that cast a shadow over the future of democracy? That's what we're going to talk about in this session. And before we do, in order to diagnose the discontent that afflicts democracy, we have to ask what democracy is about. We've seen from the video that it's about voting, but suppose people elect, when they vote, the wrong leaders. Suppose they elect authoritarian figures with little respect for democratic norms. What then? I'd like to invite you to respond to a proposal about voting that was offered in the mid-19th century, when debates were raging about universal suffrage. It was offered by a British philosopher, John Stuart Mill. John Stuart Mill was in favor of universal suffrage. Everyone should be able to vote. But those who are well-educated should get more votes than those with lesser education. He had a whole scheme for this. He said, for example, unskilled laborers should get a vote. Those who were skilled should get 2 votes, a foreman or a supervisor 3, farmers, traders 4, professionals like lawyers and physicians should get maybe 5 votes, and university graduates, he said, should get at least 6. Here's our first question. How many of you like John Stuart Mill's proposal for more votes for the better educated? And how many object to it? How many disagree with it? Let's begin with a show of hands. How many are in favor? I only see about 6 hands, maybe 7. How many are against? All right, let's begin. The majority here is against. Let's begin by hearing why most people here are against John Stuart Mill's proposal. Who will begin our discussion and tell us why? Raise your hand if you'll give us your reason. We'll get you a microphone. Yes, and tell us your name.
My name is... Working?
Yeah.
Sorry. So, my name is Ahmed Abbas. I'm from Egypt. I'm not against or with. I didn't raise my hand in both.
You didn't vote.
Yeah, I didn't vote.
You didn't vote. You didn't hear what those people were telling you.
Yeah. So the issue is, I come from Egypt, and a democratic election brought us the Muslim Brotherhood, right? And at the same time, I see what's happening today. So I don't have an answer to your question. I think it's a very difficult, and I think it's even a trick question.
Well, a trick question or a hard question?
Both.
They're not the same.
Both.
So you're torn.
Yeah, I'm very torn.
Okay, you're torn.
Yeah.
All right, fair enough. Then listen. Then as you listen to the reasons, maybe you'll be persuaded.
Maybe.
Okay, so we'll see what's at stake. Lionel, go ahead, stand up. We'll get you a microphone.
I'm against because a graduate of Wharton School would have 6 votes under John Stuart Mill's proposal. He's running for president, by the way, this year. He's very well educated.
I see.
I don't
The
think Donald Trump
graduates
should
of
have
the
6
Wharton
votes.
School. The Wharton School. I see. All right. So that's a rather particular worry. Who has a principled objection to John Stuart Mill's proposal? What's your name?
Yeah, my name is Engineer Bainomicha from Uganda.
Yes.
I voted against because I've met people who have a lot of wisdom, but they
Yes.
have not necessarily gone through formal education. So with that proposal, they would be disadvantaged.
Okay, so formal education may not be a true measure of wisdom. And John Stuart Mill sort of anticipated your objection. He said if you don't have a formal education, you should be able to take a test. And if you do well on the test and show strong civic knowledge and so on, then you get the full 6 votes. With that proviso, would you agree? Now, kind of. All right. Yes.
My name is Claire Enders. His proposals did not include women or people of color. So that's my core objection to his proposals. They were always wrong. In fact, many countries still do not have universal suffrage today.
Right.
So the temple that you were showing was a patriarchal temple.
Which temple? Oh, that was in the video.
Yes,
this
that was
thing
not
here.
democracy.
Right.
That was a different version of democracy, and it excluded slaves, women,
Yes.
people of color,
Yes.
heterai, and everybody else. So we are still so far from democracy that John Stuart Mill's proposals beggar belief.
Okay, though to be fair to John Stuart Mill, he was in favor of women's suffrage. That was to his credit. But let's, so we have the issue of principle, it seems, that giving some people more votes than others gives some people greater voice and other people less voice, and that seems at odds with democratic values. Now, here I have another question for you, which is not a hypothetical voting scheme like John Stuart Mill's, but the actual composition of parliaments of Europe, the Congress of the United States today, with respect to educational background. Now, what percentage today of citizens of European countries and of the US, and then we can consider countries in other parts of the world where people also may know the figures, what percentage have university degrees, would you say? Just call it out, roughly speaking. Have university degrees? A third? 15? What about in countries outside of Europe? What percentage have university degrees? What about in Egypt?
I would say 10%. 10 or 11.
10 or 11? 40? What about in Uganda? 5? All right, now, and it's about a third, little over a third in the US, around a third in Britain and most European countries. Now, which means that about 2/3 do not have university degrees, even larger percentages outside of Europe and the US. Now, of those 68, 70, 75, 80%, how many of them are in parliament? What percentage of parliament consists of people in various countries of citizens without university degrees today, roughly? 10, 2. In the US, it's less than 5% of Congress is without a university degree. In Britain, Germany, and most European countries, it's about 10% do not have university degree. So here's our second question. Almost everyone here objected to John Stuart Mill's proposal to give better educated people, people with university degrees, more votes. Today, in practice, if you look at parliaments around the world, those without university degrees have almost no votes within parliament. How many consider this state of affairs to be objectionable, and how many think it's a good thing that we're governed by people who have university degrees? All right, you ready for this vote? All right. How many find it objectionable? Wow. Wow. Only about 6 people. And how many do not find it objectionable? How many think it's a good thing, generally speaking, that we're governed by people who have university degrees? Well, now the vote seems, isn't the vote flipped? Isn't it a contradiction? You think? Why? All right, tell us why you... All right, well, why tell us your name.
Sitare.
Sitare, you said it's contradictory.
Yes.
Why do you think so?
Because in the first, a majority of the people here just said that they object,
Right.
object to have non-university graduates to have fewer votes. But
Right.
on the contrary, university graduates do not have, non-university graduates do not have any saying in the parliament, so it's kind
Right.
of contradictory.
Right. In the first vote, everyone felt that was undemocratic, the John Stuart Mill proposal. In this vote, almost everybody's fine with it and thinks maybe it's even better. So who can explain why this? Well, can you reconcile these two positions? Someone who objected to John Stuart Mill but likes the way things are now in Parliament. Yes, and tell us your name.
Annabella.
Annabella.
So I feel at least the people who are elected, who are qualified, have to think about the interests of the overall electorate, so that they're representing more people, not just representing themselves. That's why I don't see it as contradictory.
Right, so people with university, hold on, Annabelle. So people with university degrees can perfectly well represent people who didn't go to university.
Yes, I think people can. If they're voted for by people who didn't go to university, who feel they're the right candidate, then they're also accountable to them and they can vote them out should they not like the actions they take.
Okay, thank you for that. That's a good reason. Yes.
I think it's very difficult to assess the individuals based on just the educational side of it.
Right.
The way that I see it is that people who are voting shouldn't have less votes or more votes based on their education.
Right.
The person who are elected should have some level of education to be able to actually, as my colleague Annabelle said, to better analyze the greater need. However, that's a differentiating factor, not the fact that whether the voters should get more weightage or not, if that makes sense.
So you're defending the two positions that were said to be contradictory. Is there someone who does find it objectionable, the current system in Parliament, where there is almost no one without a university degree? Yes.
Hi, I'm Sophie. I am British, so I'm only really familiar with the UK system.
Right.
But there's this fascinating fact in the UK that out of our last 20 prime ministers, 17 of them went to Oxford University, and the other 3 that didn't, one was Winston Churchill, one was John Major, they didn't go to university, and the other is Gordon Brown, who went, I think, to Edinburgh. He's speaking, I think, later today. So for me, it's the principle that talent is equally distributed, but opportunity is not.
Right.
And I don't know how we solve it, but back to what Claire was saying, it's a representation of the systemic issues that we have in society, that we're not allowing people to be fairly represented because the ruling elite, in inverted commas, comes from a very small population.
So you think the current system is unfair?
I do, yes.
Okay. So here, thank you for that. And thanks to everyone who's joined in both rounds of this discussion. Thank you very much. So is this a contradiction? Well, that's something that we've not resolved. But the questions that we've just been discussing shed light on a feature of contemporary democratic life, and in particular, on the polarization that afflicts our democracies. Because one of the deepest divides in politics today, in voting behavior, is the divide between those who do and those who do not have a diploma, a university degree. We saw this in the 2016 election in the United States with Donald Trump, who won overwhelmingly among those without university degrees. We saw it in the vote for Brexit, when those who wanted to remain were those with degrees and advanced degrees overwhelmingly voted for Remain, and those who voted for Brexit, those without degrees overwhelmingly voted to leave. Now, why is this? Why is the polarization connected to the diploma divide? I think for the following reason. We have to think back over the way the global economy unfolded over the past 4 or 5 decades. During these decades, the divide between winners and losers deepened, poisoning our politics, setting us apart. This had partly to do with the widening inequalities of income and wealth that developed during these decades. But it's not only that. It has also to do with the changing attitudes towards success that accompanied the widening inequalities. Those who landed on top came to believe that their success was their own doing, that they therefore deserved the full bounty that the market bestowed upon them, and by implication, that those who struggled, those left behind, must deserve their fate too. It's one of the most potent sources of the populist backlash against elites that we've seen in countries around the world is the sense among many working people without degrees that elites, credentialed elites, professional elites, look down on them, don't respect the work they do or the contributions they make to the economy or to the common good. This, it seems to me, is a legitimate complaint. Because even as globalization brought widening inequality and stagnant wages for a great many workers, its proponents offered working people some bracing advice. If you want to compete and win in the global economy, go to university. What you earn will depend on what you learn. You can make it if you try. We heard these slogans reiterated by politicians of center-right and center-left throughout these decades. What these politicians and political parties missed was the insult implicit in this advice. The insult was this: if you didn't go to university, and if you're struggling in the new economy, your failure is your fault. You didn't do what we told you you needed to do to succeed. The problem with inequality and wage stagnation is not the policies we, the politicians, put in place. It's that you didn't do what we told you to do. it's no wonder that many working people turned against meritocratic elites. This led to the politics of resentment, of grievance, that has been exploited by a great many figures who have challenged, who have upended, really, mainstream political parties. And so what should we do? What should we do to try to heal the polarization? I think we have to shift the terms of public discourse away from focusing on encouraging a kind of meritocratic scramble, a kind of individual upward mobility through higher education as the sole or primary solution to inequality, and focus instead on the dignity of work, on asking, how can we recast political discourse and political argument to debate how we can create conditions so that everyone who contributes to the economy and the common good can lead a decent life and also win social recognition and esteem, whether or not they have a university degree. What would that look like? What would a revitalized, energized public discourse look like that would take us beyond the shouting matches? Well, for that, we'll have to wait till the end of the session. But for now, I want to thank you for kicking off our discussion of democracy's discontent, the anger against elites, the populist backlash, the peril to democracy. I want to thank you for that and call in Alessandra, who will lead us in the next stage of examining the state of democracy at a time of peril.